She uploads them.
Okay, well, I think we can start. Okay, well, thanks for all of you for coming. It's very nice. We're a bit more than like the previous time, so I don't know how we can manage to actually do the talks. I mean, what we can do is like we're going to start a discussion, but what can be nice is like anytime someone wants to add something or say something, he can kind of raise his hand or something. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit of a mess if we all talk at the same time, because the stuff is being recorded and then put it on podcast, so people can actually listen to it again and like enjoy it, even though they were not here. So yeah, so the subject of today is do we need an art education? And Bert asked a specific question about it, which was what task, function, role can or art should play in the present day society, and what would that mean for the art academies as we know them? So maybe you can explain us a bit more about what you had in mind besides your question.
Okay, yeah, first of all, it's very nice being here and see some, a lot of faces I know, not all of you, of course, but I like the initiative very much, so grateful for that. When it comes to the topic or the question that I brought in, it sounds maybe like a huge question. What is the role or function of art today? But at the same time, I think it's something, one way or another, you are all dealing with, because it is immediately connected to what you are doing here at the academy, what an academy is, how our education is being organized. But also often I think, of course, you are busy doing your things, making your things and developing your ideas, but at the same time it's always part of a bigger context. And that context, that, so to speak, the outside world and what's going on outside of the academy. But the outside world every now and then enters, let's say, very much the kind of protected space we are in here, and I'm very much interested in how that is today. Some of you know, others don't, I guess, but I'm on the verge of finishing a book. Some have heard it already. I'm busy with it for quite some years, but and it's about art education. It's about, or not so much about art education, it's about the institution Art Academy. What kind of strange institution that is. And what interests me the most when it comes to our present day situation is that that an art school, on the one hand, it's a kind of professional education. So when you leave the academy, you are an artist, professional artist. So that sounds as if there is a very clear objective there, right? That we all know what we are doing here, and that we bring you to a certain point where you can enter the big world and do your thing. And at the same time, we all don't have so much of a clue what we are doing. Also as an institution. Right? And that tension I'm very much interested in. And my question relates actually to this, that I think it's, of course there are people who have developed a clear idea about what art education should be, and especially the government who's paying for these institutions. And they talk a lot about creative industries, and that artists should in the end, let's say, have a clear function in society, so that they contribute to developments because they are very open and creative. But the way the government translate it's very much in terms of in the end of profit. Industries, the word already is clear. And I think that you all, I suppose, are not feeling so much being educated in terms of taking part in an industry. I think you have other motivations for being here, other goals set probably. You think probably differently about what kind of a profession an artist is. So there is a kind of tension between what so to say society expects of an art academy, and what a lot of people who are involved here, students and teachers, what they think about the role of art and artists. And that tension I'm very much interested in, and that's also what I thought, okay, I really like to hear from you, how you... And what I said, it sounds really big, but I think it isn't, because I think all of you have ideas about why you are here, actually, and what it is you want to develop, and maybe you also have a certain notion about where you will be in the future, and I think that come from this confrontation between these two different perspectives, approaches. I think that's something that is worthwhile discussing, and that actually was my starting point.
Nice. Maybe it's nice if just to take back on your question, we can first start to, if people have ideas or stuff they want to say about, in their opinion, what is the task, function or role that should art play nowadays, because then it can lead us to interpret regarding the academy we are in, whether it's something which is logical or contrasting, or maybe you can start with that. So if there's anyone who is willing to actually say in his mind why he came to art school for, or what he thinks art school are generally teaching. Okay, where did you came in art school for?
Why are you here?
Don't be shy.
Maybe you can start to make friends.
Maybe I can start. Okay, I went here first because my previous education wasn't offering me enough creativity, I guess. It wasn't suiting me either. And I had in mind that an art academy would offer people the possibilities to either choose to be an artist in the very romantic and purist way of being, but also to choose the ability and opportunity to express yourself, willing to change things. It sounds stupid, but it's there was this article which was really interesting about the Academy of the Underground, with this design courses, which was about designing the impossible, and there was these people applying to this course saying, yeah, I want to change the world. And I think that kind of secretly I had this in my mind as well, coming to art school. So yeah, that was what I had in mind. You?
But I came here to this school,
Yeah.
or to art school in general.
If I may, just before, when we talk about art education, we need to talk about in general, not just Rietveld, because it's quite a niche version of art education.
Yeah, sure.
To say if we where we came to Rietveld already narrows the question down quite a lot. So we should think about the question as where we came to art school rather than why we came to Rietveld.
But what if you were just accepted to Rietveld? Also change the...
Yeah,
We don't know what it's like in other art schools.
Well, we
Yeah,
can...
the idea you had when you decided to come to art school, rather than because I feel like it.
Okay, let's say
Let's prefer
arts.
talking about art schools in general.
Yeah, more
And
fine
maybe
arts
we can
based.
narrow it
let's
down.
say,
Maybe we
because
can
this is
narrow
what
it
the
down
school
if
is about
necessary.
as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah, but for me, like Rietveld was really like a choice. Like it was like I didn't choose just to go to an art school. I chose like Rietveld especially. But yeah, why I chose to go like to study art like before, because I did it before Rietveld too. I don't really know. I think that I was working in like a very normal everyday job, and then I had like a choice between going to art school because I got into an art school in Sweden, and or getting like a proper like what do you say
Job.
like, yeah, or like I had like a job, but it was not I was like a, what do you say, a substitute at that job, and I had like the opportunity to be like
To
like
get a
a-
promotion.
to be like a, what do you say, like
Promoted.
employee,
Promoted.
like,
Yeah, regular.
or go to art school. And then I chose to go to art school because I felt that I like I wanted to keep on developing my life, kind of. So it was very like a more of a personal idea than maybe you had then. Like that I felt like if I would continue with working this work, then my life was kind of over, or like then it would be just the same, and I still wanted it to change. And
But why art school rather than university, like doing something academic? No, not necessarily academic.
I had done
but-
that before too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I had studied at the university a little bit, and I had been working, and then it was just like my friends were a lot of my friends are musicians or choreographers, dancers, and then I was like, maybe I can do something too. It's really like easy. Yeah.
But then you feel that you can do something in an art school that you could not do somewhere else. When you talk about personal development, what does that personal development mean? Why do you need to be in an art school to do that? To develop yourself?
I think it was a lot about giving myself the time, because I felt like I didn't have time to do that. Like, of course I could have done it after work or something like that, but I felt like I needed to have like the time to just explore that creativity or that expressing yourself in a way that art is creating, or I thought it would create that for me, at least.
Because it's not the case right now.
Like, yes and no, I think.
Okay, maybe we'll get to this later.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say maybe going to art school is one of the only institutions where you can explore yourself, and it's something very personal, and you're making works by yourself, whereas if I went to study like anthropology, you'd be looking at everyone else's work and stuff. It's not yourself. So maybe that's the personal thing you would.
But it sounds like something really egoistic in a way.
Yeah, that's what's interesting.
I mean, when you just say it, it sounds really...
Yeah, but it's kind of what it is, isn't it?
But that depends on what idea you have about art. You know,
Yeah,
also.
that's what art education is, yeah.
Yeah, and art in general, like either if you see it as a like introspection or I don't know.
But we're making stuff out of ourselves, you know, rather than if you were studying maths, it's not like that.
Yeah, I think for me it was a lot about being able to look at a subject from different perspectives as well. Like I also went to a vocational education, and then it's very narrow the way you look at a certain subject or field. But in arts you can broaden it and look at it from various angles. Yeah, and I think in a way that's kind of also has to be personal, because you can only experience things yourself, you know, and then you can broaden it out after that. So I think that's also.
But still, I think that it's like it really changed that personal thing for me after like this year, because then I've been studying for 2 years art before, and then I was always thinking that I had to do things very personal and very me. But this year I really realized that it's also possible to not, of course it's me still doing the things, but I can have a much more work way of seeing it, or more. I'm actually feeling that I'm going back to seeing my art practice or the way I work more as I saw my old work or university studies, more strict and more like I'm actually working or not just doing a hobby for my own personal reasons. So it's very changing.
Yeah, and also just to talk about what you were saying, it's it's always you doing stuff, but it could be your interpretation about something which is external.
Exactly.
Not about
Yeah, but you also, when you research, you try to broaden your perspective, I guess, and then you have to show your perspective, and that can only be done in a personal level in a way, only. But I think that's how we work as artists in a way, and then it can become general. I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah.
I think what was just a point there, also connecting to what you said, is
maybe you can speak louder.
yeah, also connecting to what you said is that because you were saying it might be seen as egoistic to say, okay, I want to go on with art studies because I can develop something personal here, but on the other side it might also be just the awareness of that only following structures other people already build up, like what would happen if you maybe study mathematics and first you learn and then after a while maybe you can do your own mathematic formulas, but they're all still based on logic and you have your tools. And on what I personally I started studying physics, and what prevented me from doing that was that I realized, hey, there's so much more what I want to see or what I want to understand or what I feel drawn to, that it would be actually a loss of potential also of information if I just focus on the science part of my interest. And I think this is also what a lot of us share there, that it's just the lack of ability or just also where's the word? And we're just not ready to focus on one thing because there's the sense of something broader. And I don't think that artists are the only people who have a lot of interest or a broader sensibility, but I think that what connects us there is just the awareness or the decision to say, okay, but let's explore what is actually broad.
But then does that not go hand in hand with what being an artist is? I don't think an art institution or an art academy or an art school is that far off any other educational institute. You are being trained to become an artist. The basic year is one big kind of brainwashing year for you lot to kind of open your perspective onto what is art, how can I function as an artist.
But that's a great
really,
paradox.
It's training. We're all in 4 years of art training right now, like you'd have in any other school if you become a doctor or a mathematician. I think it really goes with the vocation, and just because we view the art academy as this kind of broad spectrum of learning, that is what art is this broad spectrum. So for me it just kind of goes hand in hand as maths or physics. I don't know what that type of learning is. It will go with the profession that it's leading on to.
But I think first what you were saying, I think it's also a great paradox that you say the basic year is a brainwashing to open your perspective, because brainwashing and open perspective wouldn't immediately seen as the same thing.
For you to kind of find yourself.
Yeah, but then again, I think it's not brainwashing. And also, what is an important thing here is that when you study, when you become a doctor or when you become a mathematician, you will always have to start to logic. Or maybe now in the universities, you will always use logic, and you have your tools of numbers and whatever. And as an artist, you're not, or as an art student, you're not obliged to any tools. You can literally do anything.
But what I think is interesting is he said that the government is financing the art education, and what I think is interesting in education is that can see that is really our society. Like for me, for example, I came here to have a different approach of art, and because when I was studying French, you have this way of how they see art, and here it's different. But I also see this really how societies function. Like for a person from a color person. I don't know if you can say that. For me, I feel invisible in an art school because, like, we don't, like, when I'm in theory, we don't talk about artists from Africa. We don't, it's like, I can see that it's really European, and I can see that I have a white teacher that teach me, and I'm surrounded by white people. So, it's also, that's why I think it's interesting, is that you came in an education, but it's like the society, how, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell that it's filtering some stuff, like either in the way people give you informations or stuff about the external world, but also in the content of what they're teaching you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Bert, isn't it? Yeah, so you're a teacher here. I would like to know, what does art education means to you? I mean, what is an art education? First of all, I just would like to know this, to compare with France, if we have the same things about this. So, what is an art education for you? What does it mean?
Wow.
I mean, is there a way to produce something? Or what is it? Is there some knowledge, or what is it? I mean,
I would say it's a lot of different things at the same time. And so I think it is about knowledge, now that you mentioned it. It's about exploring what has been said. What Pernille said, actually, I think that is also to a large extent my idea. A lot of, let's say, it's a kind of open space, an art academy, where you have the possibility to explore a lot of things you are interested in, and maybe also discover all kinds of personal things, in the sense what you like, what you're good at, what you really don't like at all, and so this possibility to explore your personality, your personal potentialities, I think that is something also a very important aspect of it. But of course, at the same time, an academy is part of what you said, of a context, a world, and it reflects very much the world. And maybe art does that even a bit more than other professions or other institutions. So from that point of view, it's, I would say, also very much a learning space, where we can try to figure out, without having clear ideas to start from, because that's the difficult but also the interesting point, that we are also in a time, I guess, where we have lost a lot of ideas that maybe 40 years ago were still valid and dictating everything, and now we are in this situation where everything is floating and changing that quickly, that you need a kind of you need some time and hopefully also space to reflect on what's going on there. And I think an art school very much can do this, and in that sense it's also very much about learning. I would say it's about knowledge, but not knowledge in the sense of what is like in a lot of other studies, universities, what is set out to be the knowledge we should develop ourselves in, but also asking the question what knowledge is, and how it relates to this personal aspect. So what I'm very much interested in actually is that on the one hand I think this personal aspect is very important, because there is something about art and in art that always reflects the personality of the maker, because that is how art was. That is how art actually was born. That people felt in history the need and the possibility, the necessity to show their very specific, personal, unique experiences of the world. But at the same time, it's not only this very personal thing, because then you could say, how interested is it actually to hear thousands of very personal expressions? There must be something more, there must be something else added, knowledge or a shared notion, feeling, idea about certain things that reflects what's going on in a broader context, or what reflects society. And there, I think, it is more than only being busy expressing yourself, but it's reflecting what's going on in the world. And artists have, I think, more freedom to do this than most of the scientists. The fact that scientists and artists today, that they are trying to find ways to work together more and more and to combine these different approaches, I think that shows that from the point of view of artists, that from science, that they feel that there are a lot of limitations they need to get rid of. And on the other hand, I feel that artists, that they also say, okay, art is not only about showing my very personal feelings about a certain topic, but that it's also something more, or that you try to bring it to a level where it is something more. So yeah, a long story, but so there, I think there are a lot of different aspects here. That it's a very complicated thing, actually. It's not. It's more than just, let's say, expressing my inner emotions and do my thing, and it should very much agree with what you said. That's one of the reasons why I think society should be maybe more than it is done now here, also at this academy. It should be very much part of the curriculum or what we are doing, discussing.
But I feel like there's maybe two things that we could like talk about in art school. I think that the first thing to remember is like somehow compared to like regular studies where you go like to an amphitheater and you just listen to someone talking, it's like really about like the people you're surrounded by, because those people later on they can become like your associates or something, and if you don't put yourself in like a competition kind of thing, like it's, I don't know, because you arrive here and you're alone and you're like, okay, I do this for myself, and you can think that it's like super selfish thing to do, but then if you think about it, like you're just building like a network that you probably can build in university, but I'm not sure it can get as strong, because later on, like once you graduate, okay, I already have a bachelor in fine arts, and I have some friends that went to masters, or some friends that started working already, and most of the people they're working with is like people they networked with through the school, or like through people that were already at school and stuff like that. And I feel like that's our education is made mostly by like the people we're surrounded with, and I think that's like maybe the biggest difference than in a regular like university, because you can learn from each other. And for example, like Morgan, what you're doing with those talks, it's like no one pushed you to do this, like, and you managed to gather people, and like we're learning from each other. I mean, it sounds super cheesy, but that's true, you know. Like it's an something you added to like your education. And also one other thing I feel like is like what you said before, it's like a space for exploration and stuff like that, but it's also a space I feel like where you, if you meet the right people, and it can be like like classmates or teachers, and they can like, you can explore like a lot of different fields that you wouldn't be able to explore unless on your free time in like regular university curriculums. Like for example, I have friends who are like studying general studies in France at the moment, and it's like really poorly because they don't have a lot, like the teachers are not super advanced on it and stuff like that, and like all the text and all the source of informations that they got like during this curriculum, I got like through conversations with my teachers, and like the knowledge goes way faster in art school because it's not like clustered or like, you know, I feel like that's
I think that's interesting what you're saying, because talking about the word knowledge, I think it's, I mean, maybe I'm extreme, but I think it's really extreme the way I feel like we're so disconnected from the world in general, and that we actually have such a few like practical or theoretical knowledge offered to us. Like I know it's a very DIY school, but then you're just wondering like, but so what is the point of being at school, you know?
It's the same in all the schools, even in Paris. I mean, at Art Deco, and we don't have a class of knowledge or etc. No, we have to see what's happening outside by yourself, and so I mean, it's always the same in all the art school, because you can't spend time to just teach someone something from outside, etc. I mean, it's up to you to learn something.
No, I get it, but when you have this word like education, I mean, it means that you get in an institution and you pay for, of course we pay for stuff that we have, but you pay for something. Either if you don't pay, you just like sign up for something that you're going to be in for like 4 to 5 years, and you want to end up at the end being somehow, and it's specific for the art society, for the art education, somehow be able to, I don't know, like be in a society in a way or another, or you can choose not to be. But I mean, and this is just why I was asking, because you were underlying the word knowledge that much, that I think that this kind of like paradoxical thing about knowledge, which is like, it's like art school in general, as you said, I feel like it's the place where in all of education I've seen so far, where people ask you to get all of your knowledge by yourself, in a way, which I think is just interesting, because it's kind of like a paradox, you know?
But for you, art education means when you go to a school, they will teach you how to do art. Is it that for you? I mean, when we say art education, so when you go to a school, you're waiting from the school to get an art education, like, okay, Morgan, today, so you have to do like this, you have to paint like this, etc. I mean, is it your what you expect from an art school?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe first, as you said, giving this information about what's going on around the world and how the structures work, either for example the structure of the school itself, you know, like giving people information, why it is like this, like why don't we talk about these artists or these things in the world, why is the school so, I mean, so close up in itself, you know, like it's only about like of course it's like our teachers and like, but why can't we have more like people from the outside world to tell us more about like various subjects which are making the world what it is nowadays, you know, for example.
I think the problem on this question is the word education, because for me, when we say education, I see it as when we was a child, young, our parents gave us an education. So it means that they teach us how to do something. I mean, to put the glass on the table, etc., to not cross when it's right, when etc. And in art school, we don't have art education. We have some help, people, teachers and we don't have teachers also. In France, the teachers say that we are not teachers. We are just here to help you to develop your things and a new way of project something, etc. So, I mean, I think the word education is not working here on this question.
Art classes.
But that's the
Sorry.
thing, you're in applied art school, because that's a bit different at the same time, because, well,
Yeah, I mean, you have art philosophy classes, art theory classes, and in your later years you'll have like how to get into galleries and how to promote yourself, and you do have how to be an artist classes. It's not like these things don't exist, you know, it's like you are being trained to be an artist. It's all there.
You can also be 4 years at the Rietveld and not be an artist.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people leave art school and just never ever do anything with art.
No, of course.
It's not like you will be trained to be an artist. It's just kind of there in the background, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like to call it an school, or like it's more like an attitude of towards learning than a school. Like you can't really compare like a Waldorf school to a regular school, which I think like art school or at least Rietveld and similar schools, they're not really schools. They're places where you're surrounded with an attitude of learning, but you can't, like as you said, the government thinks that this school is something completely different, and it wants points, and it wants credit, and it wants grades, but to call this a school is not really correct, I think.
Yeah.
In a conventional way.
I think that's the kind of like the source of all the discussion is like maybe because before there was a kind of a structure in our school that for several reasons maybe is not relevant anymore regarding like our present society or either art school or art in general. I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, I mean, I'm not asking them to like teach me how to paint or teach me how to write a synthesis or something for a gallery or whatever. But it's more like,
But
to a personal level, my problem is mainly on the fact that I feel like we're so disconnected from the world, and I think it's something which is problematic because, as we all said, art is also about like either denouncing or interpreting something. But how can we really interpret something? I mean, we can still on a personal scale, but I don't know.
But maybe that is something to go into a bit further, because you say that you feel that we are here quite disconnected, let's say. But does everybody think the same way about this? That you feel disconnected with what?
But I would also like to hear why, like, what would you think would connect us more to the world?
Okay, maybe she can.
Can I say? Well, me, when I don't know, I think sometimes in art school it's really like, oh, we are open, we kind of accept everybody, and I have the impression that sometimes we don't even like know like the other, you know, like I had the impression that sometimes it's really like when I like hear some talk in the class, like maybe it's their education and how they were surrounded, but I don't feel that they went with some people that are completely different than them, then they do different things. I feel that art school sometimes is really like you are, and that's a good thing to be like, oh, you have a connection with everybody, you have a network, but at the same time you kind of push you away from the world. And sometimes I had the impression that people go super far and are not like, they don't realize really what's happening.
Like, wouldn't be, for example, to answer your question, like historical or classes or stuff like this, but it's more like, I don't know, every time I say that I'm in an art school or that I talk about it with people that are from external, I think like there's such a gap, like they don't know at all what we're doing, and it's kind of hard to tell them as well what we're doing, you know. And I think that's the kind of like differentiation I'm talking about. It's not about having historical classes or like very specific knowledge, but it's more like, how come people still think that art is still about like drawing perfectly, or you know what I mean? Because this is what people think. Like,
but I think but Bert was saying before also that it's like art school is also a place to reflect upon society, and I think a lot of people sense that in a way. So when you then say I'm from art school and you maybe talk to an engineer or something, and this gap I think often also arises because people just get skeptical and a bit scared because they feel like, okay, you're doubting upon things I really hold on to.
But do you think we really like actually reflect more upon like or about different things than other institutions?
I think we act on our reflections, like
But
for
I
example
think we
saying,
just do
okay,
it in
for me it
another
would
way,
not.
but I don't think we do it in a broader way.
No, but that's not what I said.
But I also don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's like how much we reflect. We just do it maybe in another way than normal, but it's still like super narrow and limited. I think somehow. And we
I
like
think it's
to
probably
see
also
ourselves
just
as
a personal
open-minded,
thing.
but it's
Yeah.
like we are open-minded in the sense like we are like in just one way.
But I don't think that's true. Like, I think a lot of people here are actually, like, when you talk about open-minded and still open-minded just in one way, I think just being aware of doubt and carrying around doubt with someone the whole time, you can either do that or you cannot do it. Like, you can either accept a lot of things and doubt maybe in a very specific realm where you allow yourself to doubt and the rest you kind of keep as ideology. Or you do what basically it does, I'm pretty sure, is like peel off ideology a lot and start doubting literally nearly everything. And I don't know if I'm talking about a personal experience here, but I have the feeling that like it comes to points where you have to really let loose like ideologies or things you were not doubting upon yet because they have quite their importance, but still you start doubting them. And that I think is what opens the mind in a also broad sense.
But what is it that you miss then within this context? Because
I think we see it from just one way, like.
And what is this one way?
It's hard to define. I mean, but I think we like to see ourselves as open-minded, but it's just like in one spectrum. Like it's just one. It's like it's very left-wing, this school, and it's very like. When then somebody else like tries to get in, for instance with the Kriak thing, then like we closes our doors because it's like we are scared of like something different. So we're like only open-minded to like all this like what is considered what is open-minded, but what is like actually different, and we don't want to listen to somebody that's like radical different than us.
Yeah.
But is that also an issue where really the voice of the whole school was speaking, or like I'm asking like especially with the Keurig thing, is it a result to voices getting loud, or is it a result to a lot of voices talking about the same? And I think that it's rather about a group of people who thought in a very specific way, and this is again maybe an ideology then. And they held on to it and therefore got loud and like put a lot of energy into talking against Keurig. And
But
then
still, the school actually accepts that. I think that is like a mistake.
But then the school as an academy has to act as a safe space. Because it's
Yeah,
like
but
I work in a kitchen, like I'm a chef de partie in a kitchen, and that's not a safe space at all. And if the kind of things that were said there get said in school, and you let the outside world into this safe space, you know, the academy cannot function as a free space for learning. And the problem I have with Kira is that they are this kind of like pseudo alt-right wing like website who side with like Hidden Style and all these like alt-right Dutch newspapers. And as soon as you start inviting those people into the school, you lose like the autonomous freedom we all have as students. And that's when it gets like dangerous, that you can no longer voice, you know, we can't have things like this because then you have presence like that in the school.
But I think still there are also things you can't say in this school. It's like as you say something, it's like that's the people, that's what they're talking in the kitchen, they cannot say it here, but there's also something that if you turn it around, it's like they also they couldn't go here and say it, which is actually wrong because they should be able to say these things, because otherwise, like, we only stay open to like one set of like things, but not another.
But this is kind of going down this route of like American ideas of free speech. It's like you don't get a free right to say anything that you want, you know. Everywhere you go, there's always, you know, a kind of level of understanding of good and bad and what is okay. It's not like art school is a space where you can just come and say everything and everyone's going to sit there and applaud.
No, but I think, especially in arts, this is not applying. Like, there is not a level sense where things are not good or bad anymore. Like, there's...
This is like common sense.
Yeah, but that's the dangerous thing. I think that's the way we talk about it a lot. For example, with Kira, it's like common sense.
Well, of course, if Kira comes
but I think that's maybe what you mean as well. That there's this idea of what common sense is, and I think that's already not very open-minded.
But they're not going to upset you in anyways, because you're white and you're tall and you're blonde and you're mad. Whatever they say is not going to upset you. But some people in the school, if they want to come here, like what they say could upset them. And like, it's not even about upsetting, it's about like respecting.
I'm also very upset, like, for a lot of reasons, but yeah, I don't know, I find it so...
They attack white artists in the same way that they attack the black artists. So
that's not the point I was trying to make. Is not what
I
they
think
say.
that's an important part of Kirak, that they are really personal. And I mean, when I watch their videos, I sometimes feel very uncomfortable with what they're saying to anyone and what they're saying about anyone, because I don't like people being mean, but that's what they're doing, and that's what they're doing, and they're doing it to everyone, and they're doing it for a reason, and the reason is that they don't want to go along with this left ideology of being soft and being nice to everyone.
But then who do they bring with them, you know? When they come and have an interview in school, and they bring Haynes Style with them, and then they have like private audiences with Haynes Style. It's like, you know, they're not just Keyrack, it's the whole like
They're not trying to stand still.
Yeah, they are. They've just done a big thing in DuPont with Haynes Style.
Yes, they're talking with Haynes Style.
If you use them as a mouthpiece, you know, it's like.
And they are not like other Dutch left people, because they're actually left. They're not like other left people saying, "Oh, I don't want to come in touch with Haynes Style because they are so wrong," because they are wrong in many ways. They're like, well, if you have an opinion about this as well, come with us. They're okay with it, even though they might not agree with things though. That's like part of everything they stand for, just being open to that kind of thing.
Maybe what we can focus more about this like Kirak thing is like so yeah, well, it's just saying that it's mainly like this example he took to represent the fact that being in art school is maybe not that broad anyway, and it has the question whether some stuff should be filtered or not, but I mean, I'm just saying this because we could talk about Kirak stuff for hours. So.
No, but I think that I think that for me, like being open-minded and open is about also being aware about things, and that is something that I still think that we are learning here, because we are like talking a lot with each other, and we are showing our works, and we are reflecting on our works, and we are reflecting together and with our teachers and from different countries and ages and everything. So I think like being open-minded is not about being like open to everything, but maybe to be aware of that people have like different way of looking at art and learning art, and that we can like, that's maybe the good thing about an art education, that you can learn in different ways, I feel at least. And yeah, I think that's a good thing.
And you feel like it's really present in the school? Like you really feel like...
in some ways, and in some ways not. Like, of course, like Rietveld has a little bit narrow way of seeing it, but it's at least more open than art schools in Sweden, for example.
which are more applied from what I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's then some different things because.
Yeah, but also in the more like more open schools, they still have a very very narrow way of learning and talking about art.
I wanted to ask you, David, what you were upset about, if it is linked to all this like subject, like not if it is something like on the personal level, but like if it has anything to do with like the structure of the school or the way you perceive art education in general.
Well, yeah, well, when I'm upset, it is kind of personal.
Then,
yeah. But the thing is, what I'm mostly interested in art academies now and the way it's structured is that I really feel that we really try to do something about diversity, for example, and that we try to have like an open space with a lot of different people, and then there's always this argument that we have a lot of different nationalities and stuff like that. But I think for me it was really interesting, and what I see more and more in the entire article, but also here, is the whole problem of class, and that's something I'm now really kind of frustrated about, because I have the feeling that getting in an art academy is getting more and more something for the rich. I think that the biggest part of the students here in school are middle class or even upper middle class. And for me, that is a really big problem in diversity, and also links for me to a lot of other problems we have with, for example, racism and the whole diversity issue. And I never hear anything about it, or rarely. And problem of class, that's for me really something that's really big and should be discussed a lot more in this one.
But then this is something that I've struggled with the entire time of being at Rietveld, is this like big class divide. And meeting my first millionaire in art school, like the child of a millionaire, felt like amazing. And then you realise slowly and slowly that you're surrounded by like children of millionaires.
Yeah.
It's kind of this like, oh, I've just come to like accept the fact that this is what I need to be. And like the art school, well, especially Rietveld, perpetuates this in like the way you apply for funding. Especially in the last year, you can only apply for funding if you can back it up with, I don't know what the amount is, it's like, what is it, 2,000? If you've got money, like 2,000 willing to spend on one project, they'll give you more money. And there's all these different funding schemes about like, if you can put so much in, then you can get so much more out. And it is this, I still don't know really where I stand on it, or like what to say about it, but there's always been this big kind of like, you know, what to do about, yeah, it is. I mean, in England, you kind of get a fair shot of it, because everyone has to pay the same, but everyone gets the same, what's it called?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Loan?
The same?
Yeah, loan.
Oh, like student
yeah,
loan.
everyone can apply for the same student finance, but then still you do find that like in the best art schools and the best kind of schools, there's always this like upper class.
Yeah.
It's a very privileged.
Yeah, and art has a big history with the upper class, and that's still very
well,
much
the middle
present.
class.
And it was at a different discussion here that somebody was asking himself like, yeah, why are there no like not more like people like black people from whatever, and then and that also really relates to me to class in a way, because I think art has been for a big part for the upper class, which was for a long time white, and I think but yeah, the discussion then went to like people saying that the Rietveld is in a way quite racist and we're not open enough, and we should be open even more and be even more inclusive, which is true, but I think, yeah, as soon as there is this class problem, which is still here, then, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but...
Sulela, want to say something? Oh, maybe you want to say something.
I get it. Yeah, okay. No, I think we don't really talk about this privilege. I think in art education, and I don't know. I think also I don't know why, but I'm coming from a neighborhood where it's not a super rich neighborhood, and I could see some like friends who really wanted to do art, but they couldn't do it, or the only way to do it was because of kind of this artist was open their studio for them, and it was free. And when I was in the middle school, like they don't give you this opportunity to you could do art, like I had some parents who kind of let me do it, but I have also a lot of friends who missed this chance.
Is it an expensive school here?
What?
Is it an expensive school?
No, but
with
the cost
going
abroad
up.
also as well. To live abroad, it can be expensive as well.
Okay.
No. But you were talking about when you were in France. This is your friends in France.
Yeah. Like, no, I don't like. Yeah.
But I think it has more
But of
to do
course
with.
it's everywhere.
I think it has more to do with what you learn in school than because, for example, if you see in France, the best art schools are free, but it's more about the content of what you learn, which is synonym of either instability or security in a way,
Well, I think when you grew up in a neighborhood where it's only immigration or second generation of immigration, we don't give you this opportunity to go in this direction, or you can do art, or you can do this. I think there's a lot of person where they want to do it, but
Excuse me, but this is a big cliche. I mean, I also come from a poorer neighborhood, if you want. My family is not rich, and I'm in Art Deco right now in Paris. So, and when I was young, I wasn't expected to study in art school, but I am studying in art school, so it means nothing. I mean, if you want to do it, you can do it.
No, it's
no,
not.
but I mean, if you're a second generation, when your parents come from a country, they don't know anything when you are 10 in a house, I can tell you that, there was, this artist who opened the gate, and it was how we could learn art for some. But, I mean, really, when you don't have me, it's because I'm a third generation, so I can see the difference, and I had this conseiller
council of orientation,
who was really giving us all this feedback. But there are some people where it doesn't work, and I know it can seem cliche, but I'm sorry, you can see here, but that it's not.
But I think still that it's more of a, it's not really only a class problem, but more of a cultural problem. Because where I'm from, it's close to Munich, and there are a lot of people who have good money, and it's quite a normal middle class mixed up. And nobody's there doing art in school. You don't learn to do art. Sometimes you do a bit of drawing.
But why? Because art is it's a privilege. Art was not.
Yeah, but these are privileged people. They're not poor. They're not from they don't suffer from anything. There's no interest, and it's just not in their daily lives. So I think it's really more of a do you have an artist living in your village who opens up the gates, or don't you have it? And then again, it's a new question and a new layer of privileges, which is not connected to money.
Yeah, but my point is that I think class has the ability to really create a culture, and that's in the end what you see. It's not that everyone in the middle class or upper middle class, then suddenly they're all the artists or something. But it is the group that ends up in the art school more easily than working class people. So that creates for me a certain kind of culture. And I also don't come, and what you said about a cliche, I think, of course there are exceptions. I mean, I'm also not from a rich family, and I think that's the cliche to always, like, oh yeah, but you can do whatever you want, and hey, but I'm not rich. But I think on an average level, there is really this class problem. And
but this is a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, if a poor guy wants to study art, he can do it. I mean,
But when
yeah, but it's not
when
always
you-
it's a choice. Okay, maybe his mother
But
will
sometimes
say,
But-
no, you have
but-
to do.
I mean, I'm sorry to say
No,
that,
it's okay.
but like when you're black or when you're Arabic, we don't give you this. You know, it's not
Society
like
doesn't want it.
like it's not about. That's why I think there is the class, but I think there is also the color. And like I say, like we have art history, we have this, and you don't see like there is a lot of when in the Renaissance and everything like that. There's a lot of how do you say? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, there is a lot of work with colored people, but you don't see it. And if I don't know. I think there is a privilege to be in an art school.
No,
you
but
know,
you're definitely right, and I think
and a
like
white privilege.
Of course.
you also, I mean, I get, I totally get your point, but I think that's more on a personal issue. You know, you were talking about this choice to make it, even though it's not a stable thing, or even though your family maybe doesn't encourage it or whatever. But it's more on a personal level that you chose to do it. But there's so many more issues, you know, for like this minority, this like not minority, but for these classes, which actually have to deal with so much more than what we were just mentioning, which, as she said, maybe like racism or like I don't know, the fact that they were not like teach at some point about this possibility of art education or whatever, what you could have been at some point in your life, you know. It's, I mean, it's
Well, what I'm wondering is also like maybe also connected more to the beginning of our talk is like, can we also then is there a possibility to get this privilege what we all have, and we also talked about this in the other discussion, to somehow include it and incorporate it back to help to like shift awareness or raise awareness and maybe less privileged people or less privileged classes.
Yeah, but even though, for example, we're making this awareness and stuff, I think, I mean, I don't know, in my head it's much more complicated than this because yeah, that's the thing, like, you can tell people what we're doing in art school if you first can do it, and then you have to, what if they ask, like, for example, okay, so what am I going to do then, or like, is it going to be stable for me, or like, whatever, you know, you can't have a proper answer.
But
And
is it
you
more
cannot.
also like relationship between art and the real world?
Yeah.
Because it can also be a very privileged thing, and like I'm not like disrupting it, but also I think art, as most everyone know it, is not really what art is. And maybe if we compare it to like the Middle Ages in Europe, where the privileged also have art, but they commission art, say in churches, and it's very accessible because the person who can't read would get a lot of inspiration from art on the walls of the church. And now it's become very distant, and there's no attempt to bring it back to the real world at all, which is a problem, I think.
Yeah,
amongst many.
I agree with you, but like, well, I'm not from a country where classes or race would be an issue or even a topic, because in Estonia we don't really have anything like that as an issue. Maybe the Russian part of the country, but it's more about privilege in the sense that you don't have exposure to art in any schools basically, and you don't really know anything about the field, or you don't know that it is even an option unless your parent is an artist or someone from your family shows you what this world is. Whereas if you take other fields like literature or music or mathematics as like the basic one, then you're always at school exposed to it and you know what it is basically about, or biology or anything like that. Whereas with art it's the privilege of yes, information. It's not really about class, but class becomes part of it because certain classes are not exposed to it at all.
But then do you think we're idolizing this art education towards like, you know, an artist in an art gallery putting up a nice painting and selling for like 5 million? Because I actually the art industry and the creative industry surpasses that. That is like the tiny 0.5% at the top end of the spectrum, which, you know, maybe one person in this room is going to get into. And really, like, my mum's an art psychotherapist who works for the NHS. She gets like 20 grand a year, and it's like a really shit job, but this is where art schools landed her. Do you know what I mean? And I think this kind of like privileged positions in the art school don't necessarily lead to other privileged positions.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, because we're talking about information, but if information is the first step, what is the second step? Because you can give people information. It's like, okay, this is what we are in art school, but that doesn't mean that people are more likely to go there for certain reasons, you know? Because, I mean,
Yeah, it doesn't
what does the art
rooted
school
in
has to offer to people?
structures. It's really
Yeah, it's more in the sense that being in an art school doesn't mean that you're going to be a successful artist, or that it is a really, really amazing field to work in, and every other field is jealous of you. Like, it's more that some people have access and some don't, whatever you make of it. Like,
and in that sense, that is what I found interesting about this discussion. In the end, and I think it's a long process, that this is not something you change overnight. But I think that step by step we get more and more aware of the fact that that of course culture is, it's not not an open play field where everybody can just enter when they like to do that, or say it's very much connected in the end to power relationships and looking at culture, and that is quite a recent awareness that we start more and more understanding that all our ideas about art, but also about culture in a more general sense, that in the end are very much connected in a lot of different ways and on a lot of different levels, and sometimes very subtle, but in the end they are connected very much to power issues, and in the sense, who is dictating the context, the language, the way we start discussing things, we start talking about things, and that is something that needs. That's also why, in my question, I'm very much what I said. I'm very interested in how this outside world that is step by step changing art education and notions about what art is and how art should or can contribute to culture in a more general sense, but that this is something that are really, we are beginning to get an idea about the complexity of this, and that will take a lot of effort and also initiative like this, in fact, to bring these things on the table and see how they can be in a lot of different ways maybe being introduced into the curriculum or into what's going on here, and bring that outside world in. But what I said in the beginning, I think that's one thing that definitely needs to be done, and it has changed. Believe me, because I walk around here already for quite some time, and it was in the past. It was even much worse. The word politics. When you use the word politics, people would point at the door, because art is something that is disconnected. It is about the higher things in life and in the world, and politics is dirty thing. So we are not, and or it becomes propaganda, and that's what we don't like. So the fact that politics has entered, and issues like race or issues like cultural differences, and that it step by step it is entering, far too slowly, but it's entering art schools. But one thing I want to add, it's one thing. On the other hand, I also believe that we should not, of course, turn an art school into a kind of how to call that, a place where we have very clear definitions about what we want, and that we create a kind of process step by step to know the outcome. No, I think one of the wonderful things of an art school is also that there is this kind of limited and should be discussed, but there is still a kind of openness and open space where we can experiment and have clashes, hopefully, but so there are a lot of different things that come together in this institution, in what an academy is, and but of course it needs to be discussed on a daily basis. It's very, very true.
But do you think that if the school 20 years ago was a school of children of the elite not discussing politics, and now it's a school with children of the elite discussing politics, that in that view it has gone forward? Because the way politics are now in the Netherlands, it's probably not going forward in that way, because Mark Rutte doesn't give a shit if a poor child wants to go to the Rietveld.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. He's fine with the Rietveld as long as it makes enough money and he doesn't have to give it too much money. And the Rietveld can so only function if it has people with money, because the Dutch government will not give him more, probably.
Yeah, there is definitely a tension there, but also maybe art academies in general, but the Rietveld, it has a kind of it has possibilities that other schools in general don't have. And that has to do with this crazy concept, art, because since nobody knows exactly what it is, then of course the government, they want to invest, and they say, okay, we pay a lot of money for that institution, but that means also that you should deliver people that can function in society. And so they have ideas about that, but at the same time they know that art is very hard to define, so they also say, okay, we don't know exactly what it is you are doing, but we give you some free playground, let's say. But that is a constant struggle. It's something that needs to be defended on a daily basis almost. And the problem is that it's also a discussion on the level of the academy as such. That because and there I think that students can play a very important role to address a lot of these issues, so that they actually become more and more to be part of what it is we think we are, because it's not given. It's yeah.
I think also one thing which might cause this feeling of being disconnected to society or politics or whatever is going on, because there's a lack of know-how how to discourse, how to have a discourse about those topics. I mean, when you start studying politics, you will get this information, and this is what you have to look upon. And when you read a speech, these are important facts, and you kind of learn how to deal with the topics. And I think here, as we have all different interests and all look at things from a different angle, and all of this is allowed, it's hard to know how to talk about things. And then for me, I can kind of relate with the feeling of feeling disconnected then to the topic. Yeah,
I personally, that is also something how the discussion started. I don't feel the Rietveld or this community not at all disconnected. And maybe this is also because it was in the past totally different. The fact that the way art deals with the world, that in itself is politics. I think that is something that more and more became to be an awareness, and that people more and more know that art is not disconnected. It's very much connected with the world. And I feel when I look at and remember all the students I had, that today it's totally different compared to 15 years ago. And I feel that students are much more aware of what's going on in the world, and that they want to be one way or another play a role there and have discussions and connect what's going on here with the outside world. So although you could, of course you can always say it's just the beginning and a lot has to be done and changed, but I think it's rather the big steps have been made already, really. That is what, and that what I think is a very, very positive thing.
But then what steps do you envision in the future for art schools today, if you have any?
Yeah. That's how I started the discussion, because I like to learn a bit more about that also or to hear from you what. But yeah. I think in the end it's a very delicate balance between on the one hand having this what I call an open space where you can try out things, experiment, learn about yourself also and what you want and how you connect to this broader environment. But at the same time, that's one thing, but at the same time I also hope that an art school, or maybe the Rietveld, that it gets more and more, and it's happening, I think, but that it will be more and more connected with what's going on in the world, and to find possibilities to work with people outside of the academy, and the balance between these two things. So this space for doubt and personal development and discovering what it is you want as an individual, what you want to learn or to contribute or whatever, and on the other hand confronting yourself what's going on out there. And I think it's a difficult thing. You cannot. I think that's also something that you cannot dictate these things. There should be also enough room and space and patience to let it happen. But therefore, I also think it's important that of course that the academy should provide a structure for that, and I think there are things that can be improved here. But on the other hand, that students should also, and therefore what I said, an initiative like this, but a lot of other things that can happen, where students come together and have this exchange of thoughts, and also try to have a certain effect on how things are being organized here, or at a certain point maybe go to the board of directors and say, okay, we want things.
Well, I think
want change.
I do not see the board director here at all. I think she's a bit missing, for example.
But I think invite them. Right?
Is there even a student council kind of?
Yeah, that's also something.
Yeah, we don't have one. Right?
Because in Eindhoven, they're really
Well,
I don't know.
I was in Eindhoven, and there we meet with about twice a
Three
week.
Dutch guys sat in a room. They don't really do anything.
That's a student council. I thought student
No,
council.
that's the board.
Every
That's
year
board.
there's a call out for a student council, and it's this big irony that no one's actually going to spend enough time doing it. So
Yeah, that's so funny, and I know that I'm not the only one. A lot of teachers they ask students get more involved with that, and for I don't know what reasons it never.
But also, I think if there's a student council, then the school itself should be much more involved, because now the school is kind of distant for example, like then we should meet analysts on like at least a monthly basis, so that we should get our point of view across. And like for now, I don't know what the school is doing. I don't think they communicate really
Yeah,
that
there was
much.
that questionnaire the other week.
Yeah, but also this questionnaire, like I found like the questions, it's
They're
not
ridiculous.
like it's not something I would relate to.
No.
It's not something I'm like, oh yeah, here I can actually talk about what is in my head.
Apart from the last page when it said give your comment.
Yeah,
And
give
then I
your
was like,
comment, and then you're free to do so. But the rest is just I don't know. Very nice.
Yeah, it's not very transparent.
And you think like what are they going to do with it as well, with all these people who are writing it? Who's going to read and remember all of
But
that?
I think like you probably know as well, like in Eindhoven Academy, the student council is extremely active and they take part in basically every decision that the board makes.
But actually
like they receive analysis and feedback and reasoning behind every decision.
Well, like there you are actually like you can veto a decision that the school would make, like a school fee or something. They have to come and ask you first. But also I think maybe it's a bit too much for a student to do actually, because if you take like normal Dutch universities, they actually have a full-time job for a student for a year to be on a student council.
Yeah.
So here, like how do you reward it? Because at my old place, you get like a holiday for a week or something, but also you need a lot of incentive for that because it's a lot of work that you are doing.
But it's kind of rewarding already in itself now.
It is, but also it's like it's 4 hours a week.
I had a nice talk about this with my teacher, because it is my teacher Hans Muller, because it's a discussion that happens like every year. This discussion about why don't we have a student council, and it is just a case of there's not enough people to get behind it and actually spend time on doing it. He said when he studied in Rietveld in like the golden age of...
When is that?
The 80s, when it was really like this. When this guy was studying, you know,
a long time ago.
When it was all going down, he said that you just stood on the table and threw chairs around until someone listened. And you know, maybe the lack of people doing that is also the problem.
Yeah, need more fire.
What? In a council meeting?
No, just in the classroom.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're too comfortable actually. It's like we are very privileged and we're not really, it's like we just, you know, laid back and like let things go to us.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not actually from here. I'm from the university and studying philosophy. I should mention that. And a lot of problems that are mentioned here are playing a big role at the university. For example, what you said, that it's really easy to get in touch with like biology and maths. It's not. If you're from a lower class family, and your family wants you to get to work, you're not going to study for 12 years or 10 years to become a really good biologist. You don't have the incentive. You don't have people in your family who do that. You don't have people in your neighborhood who do that. It's a big problem in like in the Netherlands, but in a lot of countries around it. And in that way, I think our school's not that different from university, because it's you can loan from the government, but if your family doesn't have money, you don't want to get a big debt that you know you're not going to get out of it. And if you're studying biology or philosophy or maths, you're also unsure if you're going to get a good job. But I think art school can be different, maybe. I mean, I don't want to tell you anything from the outside. But in that way, that you're more standing up against things and not being so calm and being so like a scientist and always, well, I'm doubting this and I'm not really sure about what I feel about this because maybe this and that. That's a place for like people who do research and sit at their computer the whole day. And what I really like about this school is that when I'm here, I mean, when people are working with materials and walking around, that's different from being at the library at the UvA. Because at the UvA, everyone is sitting silently in front of their screens all day and getting a burnout because they're not moving around. and I feel like here there are probably also people who are like that, but I feel like the atmosphere is really different, and there's also space for creating that atmosphere more, and that's the space you get to engage creatively with these kind of problems, and not just be like a philosopher, just like this all day.
But I don't think we do it.
Well, there are a lot of philosophers, but like if you're, I mean, standing on a table and throwing out around the chair is like an extreme.
But what would be an interesting question? Why, what you say? Why is it not happening here? That could be maybe a nice discussion for the
What question?
So why? Because that is an interesting question.
I mean, we're not really you're taking an act now, but it's like it's kind of the first time it happened.
No, it's the third.
Okay.
No, I mean, things have to grow.
Yeah.
And
No. No, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like I think we could do that a lot more, and also just like questioning things. I think it's not really possible to question things here, like when you. It is, but at the same time, the rules you can't really question. Like,
but
they're like.
We're having a discussion about the art education we're having right now. So I mean, I think there's a lot of like schools where I mean, I'm not saying they would say no, but it would be hard to actually rent a room from the school itself, questioning the structure of the school. You know what I mean? I mean, like I did that event and I asked for a room and I have one of the teacher from the school. I think it already shows something about like how flexible the school can be about its structure.
But
or
I
like
still don't think it's flexible enough, and we shouldn't like just stop fighting just because we are like can do this.
But in comparison to that, I also think it is very flexible. But I have also the feeling that it's not used enough, maybe. Like before even stretching the possibility onto flexibility, maybe first using all its potential, and I don't think that's done already. I think we're quite far from that.
I think the whole charm of the Rietveld is that it's very flexible.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like winky wonky place where anything can happen. I'd like to know what rules you're not allowed to say no to.
Yeah.
It's like, for instance, there's somebody taking a drug in our class, doing a performance in sculpture, and she then had to say it was no real drug because otherwise she would have been kicked out. And I think that is a bit like, it's like, where is the limits? And I somehow think it should be possible because it's like.
But doesn't that have to do with the law?
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually to do with the art.
Yeah, cool.
I think that's just a general
Go to the bathroom, so sad. No, I don't know. Like, it's kind of logical. You can't do drugs in the school.
You can't do drugs on the street.
Yeah, you can't do drugs in the street.
No, but you also can't be like naked on the street, but you can be naked in the school if you're doing
That's
a
good.
performance.
That's
So it's like that's kind of the same.
You will be fucked
No,
up if
like
the
one
school
is a
supports.
harmful activity,
Yeah,
and the other is
if
like
the school
completely.
supports doing drugs in front of
But
people.
it's like, I don't know. It's like
It'd become mayhem, and then there'd be no education.
But also I think there's a lot of illegal things going on that the school tolerate anyway.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So where's the limits? And I think
Up to you then.
But also like just with the Studium Generale, we were like supposed to be an active part of it, the program, but we couldn't like participate ourselves. Which I also like, then I was questioning it, but I didn't get like any feedback at all.
What do you mean?
But
So
what-
we couldn't like
being part in
we
the
couldn't like come up
organization.
with our own works. But we were like supposed to join every lecture.
Yeah. But basically, I think you all can continue and mention 100 things that, and probably it's true that or I believe you immediately. But I would say then, okay, when you have a group of students and you want really to address this problem, do it and see what happens, and challenge the structures and challenge the board of directors because that is something when David mentioned Hans Müller, and in the past that was different, because then students at a certain point would say, okay, we are not going to take this, and we want, and then everybody walked out of the school, and so there was more
fire.
Yeah. Yeah, more initiative in the things that, in the sense that organizing certain things, bring people together and starting a discussion.
Like about this drug thing, you could just get all these people together and challenge the board of directors and say, we want to be able to do drugs.
And of course, it will not immediately mean that you will succeed, but when you do nothing, nothing will happen. That's a very simple thing. And so, from this point of view, I think initiatives like this are already a very important first step, and to come together, discuss things, and when you want to make a change, okay, go for it and see what happens. And of course you will experience, will find resistance or whatever, all kinds of confronted with rules and whatever. But yeah, as long as you don't challenge things, nothing will happen. It's very easy. And to be honest, I would like to see more action than nothing.
And then how much do you think that lies within the teachers? Because I know there's the law in the Netherlands with like this 2-year lifetime contract thing. So the Rietveld likes to keep all teachers' contracts below 2 years, and then like send them away for a year and tell them to come back. And it makes me wonder that how much of the power is with you, and the kind of golden circle of teachers which are here for forever.
The golden age.
But I just don't really understand that, but like the system, but...
So after 2 years in the Netherlands, if you're with the same employer, they have to offer you a lifetime contract. So whether it's up to you whether you take it or not. But then there's the golden circle of teachers here are the ones that are on the lifetime contracts, because they don't offer new teachers these contracts anymore.
They do every now and then, but it's in the...
To what extent?
Have a lot of temporary teachers in basic here, and guest lecturers and things. You don't really get new full-time teachers.
But to what extent do you think it's challenge or not to challenge the like initiatives or actions from the student?
Well, no, I was speaking more in terms of the teachers and how much these problems or these issues of the structure of the school is on them. Because we've talked a lot tonight about what is wrong with the student side of it, because an academy is built up of teachers as well. And it would be nice to have more teachers here to talk about their experience of another kind of layer of the academic cake.
The management.
But my point would be first, don't invite immediately too many staff and teachers. No. Do it yourself. Right? Bring students together. Discuss things like it's happening now.
Nice to have an idea about what you want to change.
Yeah, exactly. yeah.
I remember the first year of the fine arts, we spent so much time talking about all these things that had to change. No one wanted to do anything about it. At the end, when someone had to do something, nothing happened. And suddenly there was no need for things to change.
What were your thoughts about the system as he described it? Do you think, in the past, for example, were there more teachers also willing to give this kind of either experience or advice to students to also actually push them further than just being a teacher? Or for example, as he said, we were talking about how bad our attitude or lazy our attitude can be as a student, but we didn't talk about the teachers. And it's not about like criticizing the teacher, but maybe the mindset maybe the teacher can put us in or do not put us in, if that makes sense.
I think it's very difficult in general terms to talk about, but it one of what is mentioned that so this new rule, it exists already for some years, and first it was 3 years and then 4 and now it's 2 and they are going to change it again. But that means so that when a teacher is teaching here for 2 years or 3 years, then the academy has 2 options, or to send a person away for half a year and then hire the person again. Then you can give this person a contract again for 3 years.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do that, you have to give someone a full contract. And in the past there were a lot of teachers, or older teachers, they had this full contract like me, so they cannot kick me out. But of course, at a certain point, it's for an art school, it's very good to have a lot of young teachers and change the department and the curriculum and bring in a lot of things from the outside world, and therefore you want to be flexible. But now it's quite extreme. When you come here and you teach for 2 years, you maybe not even know exactly how things work, and you have to go already for at least half a year. So, but that's a governmental thing, that they simply say, okay, you can. And there's a lot of struggle about that, and it would be, I think, that the academy could give contracts for 5 years or something, so a longer period of time, and that then they decide, okay, maybe another 5 years, but then you have to give someone also a contract. Or you say it's enough, it has been enough. And a lot of teachers, they find it enough when they have taught here 5 years. They have their own business and their own practice. But now it's it's
very more like a money issue for the school. That they have to, they can't afford to give the contract. Is that maybe part of the reason?
Now I think it's not so much a money issue. It's more that as an organization you want to be flexible in who you hire for a certain period of time, and which people you want to give a contract. And that's very much the discussion. But all these rules, the government has come up with these rules not thinking about art education at all, or
the 2-year rule.
Yeah, or education, because these things are decided on a level where you don't have any clue about what art education is, and that's something you have to deal with. But okay.
If we are more or less or finished, I don't know, but I just want to mention that the group discussion talk I initiated, it's made for that. If you have a subject that we think you or we need to talk about, like for example this Chirac event, I thought it could have been nice if instead of just shut it down at the end of what happened, if we could have been a place to talk about it and exchange our thought or stuff like this and whatever. But if there's a subject or I don't know, a theme or something which maybe has nothing to do with art in general, but can be completely opposite or extreme or just whatever, you can just submit, and anything will be taken anyway, but it's just it's a very open structure, and even if we want to talk about putting fire to the school or
shutting it down,
I think anything is possible anyway.
Bring back the golden age.
Yeah. Yeah. Taking the power, I guess.
Do an 80s theme.
Well, there was no proper answer anyway to the discussion, so
No,
I don't know
no,
if someone
but
has.
Well,
there is no answer.
It's discussion. It's not.
Yeah.
A question.
Read his book.
Yeah.
Is there going to be an English translation as well?
Yeah, when is it coming out?
Yeah, I was wondering as well.
My
Yes, your book.
I want to go to a school which has language now.
yeah, there will be,
Yes.
but
In how many
first
years?
I have to finish it, and I hope to do this before summer. But
So we'll have a summer.
you will hear about it when it's finished.
Speech normal.
I will organize a big party.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Thank you.